The world is drowning in debt, and the bill is rising faster than ever. Every year, many governments spend more than they earn, and to fill that gap between earning and spending, they borrow money. Some of that money goes into schools and healthcare. Some is used to fund pensions and defense forces. And some is spent on rebuilding after disasters or for stabilizing economies during crises. Plus, of course, there are leakages. So put together, this is the money that a government spends. When it borrows more than the economy can handle, it becomes a problem. And that is exactly what is happening now. The IMF, or the International Monetary Fund, has sounded an alarm. The IMF is the global financial body which helps countries in trouble with loans and policy advice. And it has come up with a warning. Global public debt is about to cross a historic line. Public debt is the total amount of money that governments owe to lenders both at home and abroad. When we say global public debt, we mean the combined borrowing of all the world's governments put together. And that number is now heading into uncharted territory. The IMF says that by 2029, governments will owe more money. As of 2024, the global public debt stood at 93% of the GDP. By 2029, it is expected to surpass 100% of the global GDP. And in a worst-case scenario, it could even hit 123% of the GDP. That's a level not seen since after the Second World War. And that's a scenario we cannot ignore.
In a extreme but plausible scenario, with a 5% probability, that would reach 123% of GDP in 2029. So a truly very high level. That leads to our policy recommendation that it's very important to prioritize fiscal policy right now.
But how did we get here? Well, the pandemic is a big part of the story. Governments spent massive amounts of money to keep economies afloat. They paid for healthcare, they provided job support, and they bailed out companies. At the same time, tax revenues collapsed as economies slowed. But that was just the start. Military spending surged as global tensions grew. Older populations are pushing up pension and healthcare costs, and climate disasters are costing billions to recover from. Then there's another big shift. For years, borrowing was cheap because interest rates were low. But now interest rates have surged. Paying back old loans is costing much more. And new debt is even harder to afford. The impact is already visible. Major economies are deep in debt. The United States, Japan, France, Canada, China, and the UK, they've all passed or are about to pass the 100% mark. America's debt will likely exceed 140% of its GDP by 2029. China's will climb from 88% to 113%. And this is not just about numbers on paper. For many nations, the pressure has become too much to handle alone. Countries are turning to the IMF for help. Reports say 86 countries owe about $162 billion to the fund. Argentina tops this list. It's the biggest borrower. It owes $57 billion. And this comes as this country fights soaring inflation and a collapsing currency. Next on the list is Ukraine. They owe $14 billion to the IMF. And this as its economy has been battered by the war. Egypt is third. It owes over $9 billion. That's because it has borrowed repeatedly to stabilize its finances. And Pakistan is at number 4. Its government owes nearly $9 billion. Pakistan, in fact, has repeatedly sought bailout packages. Years of mismanagement and political instability have made it dependent on foreign lenders. And these are just some of the biggest borrowers. But the bigger risk is yet to come. The IMF warns that rising debt and shrinking fiscal space are together making economies weaker. If markets panic, the world could fall into what it calls a doom loop. High debt could trigger financial chaos, and that chaos could create even more debt. So what happens next? Well, the IMF says governments must act now. They need to cut deficits. They need to control spending, and they must invest in growth. They also need to build what is called fiscal buffers. That is money kept as a safety net for future crises. Because if they don't, this crisis won't just change balance sheets. It could change lives. It could change the future of the global economy.
Want the facts?
The latest developments?
News that gets straight to the point.
Well, we've got all three just for you. This is Firstpost Live, a brand new show, your window into what really matters.
Don't miss it.